Yesterday, we got some pretty devastating news when oil prices dropped negative and people started panicking. Some reports said that we could expect bankruptcies for hundreds of oil companies, meaning mass layoffs. That's going to be devastation, and it's going to ripple through the entirety of the economy. It won't just stop with one industry. What people seem to forget, particularly people like Ocasio Cortez, as she mocks these people who lost their jobs, is that when the economy tanks and people become unemployed, people start dying. It's not just about suicides, which is sad and scary, but it's also about people losing access to resources, people losing access to insurance. Now, for sure, I think it's dumb that we tie insurance to our jobs, but it's also about just not having money to pay for anything. People lose their lives. You gotta think about what comes around these oil price crashes. It's not just going to be the oil industry. It's going to ripple and hit everything. Mass deflation. This is going to rapidly destabilize everything, and it's going to stress international relations, and we are sitting on the precipice of major conflict. Now, to the main segment where we want to talk about Ocasio-Cortez deletes tweet cheering oil crash that will result in scores of lost jobs. Look, I am no fan of playing this game where, Ocasio-Cortez will be the caricature of pure evil of everything we oppose. But she is a socialist. And you can see that she cheers in the suffering of others. The reason I bring that up is, these democratic socialist types like to say, we're not like the socialists of Venezuela or Cuba or Russia. We're not the communists. We're democratic socialists, meaning we just want you to vote for these policies. But they cheer and revel in the suffering of others if it means they're getting what they want. You can only imagine what they would do with this power. Before I read this, I just want to say, Ocasio-Cortez has done some really great things. She really has. Look, you can slam her, but I do not want to prop her up as some kind of caricature of all that is wrong in government. There's a lot to criticize her for. I think she's actually pretty bad. But she did work with Ted Cruz, or at least to some degree, on stopping the revolving door of lobbying. That's a positive. She's also talked about mass surveillance from social media companies. Major positive. And I've got another story here about her not wanting to support economic stimulus, and it's a 50-50 thing. I think AOC is well-intentioned. I do not think she should be held up as this, caricature of evil. We shouldn't say Ocasio-Cortez bad. And I do believe a lot of people have Ocasio-Cortez derangement syndrome, for sure. But she is the face of the new wave of Democrats. And I do think she is particularly bad. The only reason I'm giving her the compliments now is because, look, I make a lot of content ragging on the far left and people like AOC. And I really am not a fan of the hyper-focused Orange Man bad narratives or Ocasio-Cortez bad narratives. I do have legitimate criticisms for her, though, so I just want to make sure that's to the best of my abilities what I can say. So here's what happened, right? The Daily Caller reports, Democratic New York Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez tweeted and then quickly deleted comments that appeared to show adulation over the price of oil dipping below $0 a barrel, which will ultimately lead to job losses and more than that. Ocasio-Cortez on Monday reacted gleefully at news that the price of oil had dropped below zero, saying that such a milestone would mean the United States was ripe for a mass transition to green energy. The comments appear to suggest that Ocasio-Cortez was unaware of the job losses that would accompany the drop in price or simply didn't care. I think she just doesn't know, man. The tweet also suggested that she didn't understand consumers would be less likely to transition to expensive renewable energy sources while oil is cheaper than it's ever been. This is the problem I'm talking about. She doesn't know what she's saying or doing. Here's what she tweeted. In response to Brandon Smith, saying, oil prices now at negative values, meaning oil producers have to pay people to take it off their hands and store it because when demand plunges like now, that is less expensive for them than building more storage and or shutting wells down. She said, you absolutely love to see it. This, along with record low interest rates, means it's the right time for a worker-led mass investment in green infrastructure to save our planet. Cough. All right. Does AOC want to see all the suffering? I don't think so. I think she has no idea what she's talking about. But this is another perfect example of what these socialists, like real socialists, end up doing. Oh, they're well-intentioned. They say, the farmers, the laborers on the farm, should own the property. We should own the means of production. So they get rid of the landowners, the farmers who know how to farm. And then the people who take over don't know how to run the farm, and then food dries up. The Daily Caller brings up a really good point, too. You absolutely love to see it. See what? The collapse of our economy, the ripple effect, which could destabilize our entire way of life and civilization and lead to World War III? I mean, that's a rather hyperbolic way of putting it. But yeah, this is going to lead to dramatic tensions. Serious. Like, you're going to look at all these oil producing nations now with negative income. These companies, these OPEC nations, Saudi Arabia, look, they sell oil. It's where their money comes from. If oil's going negative, at least in this one particular, it's the May contracts. There's other contracts that are not negative. Well, they're going to get desperate. We're already seeing now Russia and other countries are suspending exports of wheat. Tensions are running high. But the funniest thing they bring up is that AOC doesn't realize gas is going to be cheaper than ever. People look, all of this gas is now available. People are going to be spending and buying, and it's going to be a lot harder to convince someone to invest the tens of thousands of dollars in personal solar when they're like, why? Gas costs nothing. You know, if you want to get your house fitted with solar energy, which is really, really great, it's really expensive. If you want to create these massive solar plants and offset carbon emissions, it is really expensive. The return on investment for this takes a long time. This is what people like AOC don't understand when they try to implement these policies. Oil exploration and production has a very high return on energy investment, meaning the amount of energy we put in, we get more energy out. To build solar, wind, geothermal, tidal, whatever kind of renewable energy requires a massively larger investment of initial energy and revenue to get a smaller or longer term benefit. I think it's a good idea. I think we want to get past our short-sightedness as human beings, where we often just play short-term gain games. We do need to invest in green energy. Now, I'm not going to revel in the fact that the economy is on the verge of collapse, because guess what? If nobody is working, if oil isn't being sold, you use the oil to build the wind farm. You use the oil for the trucks that come in that bring the solar panels. Okay, if the economy is on the verge of collapse, we will never get past this. We will end up like Mad Max. You ever watch that? Or Waterworld. Everything is going to be gas powered. No one's going to build expensive new technologies. When the economy collapses, they're going to fight over what we've got. She doesn't get it. The result is, people like AOC then end up pushing for policies that result in mass death, mass harm, and mass suffering. Let's read a little bit more. The progressive lawmaker deleted the tweet, but not before it caught the attention of social media and was archived permanently on the internet. Now, I want to be fair and say this is just her being really, really ignorant and naive. The problem, though, is that she is in a position of power and she's pushing things like the Green New Deal. She doesn't understand the destruction she is advocating for, and that's dangerous. A child with a loaded gun, not something you ever want to see. Ocasio-Cortez, outside of ousting a powerful House Democrat in the 2018 primary elections, is largely known for her Green New Deal proposal, which seeks to dramatically transition the country's energy sector away from fossil fuels and toward renewable forms of energy, such as wind and solar. Amid the global coronavirus pandemic, oil prices plunged into the negatives on Monday, which suggests that those who have oil to sell were willing to pay others in order to get rid of it, as barrels continue to be stockpiled in any available space companies can locate. Thousands of workers in the Houston area alone could lose their jobs amid the plunge in oil prices, with more job losses across the country to be expected. After deleting her initial comments, she said the predicament was a turning point for the climate agenda. This snapshot is being acknowledged as a turning point in the climate movement. Fossil fuels are in long-term structural decline. This, along with low interest rates, means it's the right time to create millions of jobs, transitioning to renewable and clean energy, a key opportunity, she tweeted. She is wrong. She doesn't know what she's talking about. If we were using wind and solar, we would not have a demand for that either. And the price of these things would drop so dramatically we could not invest in them. That's the problem. What don't you get? The reason fracking became viable is because the cost of energy had gone up to the point where the amount of money they could invest in actually doing the fracking was less than the gains they would make from the natural gas and shale or whatever they get from it. I think it's mostly natural gas. I could be wrong. The point is, it was not economically feasible to frack until the price became higher. And as oil prices drop, it becomes too expensive to do fracking. If we said we're going to build solar panels and wind and geothermal, well, right now, they're looking at how much money goes into it, and they're like, well, because the demand for energy, I'm not talking about oil, the demand for energy, period, has dropped dramatically. We can't afford to build solar plants, because if we build them, we will get nothing. No one will buy the energy from us. What doesn't she get? It's all tied together. The reason oil is being sold off is because there's no demand for the product. So how can you pay someone? Well, she's a socialist, I guess, so you know what she wanted. She wanted the government to just do it. This brings me to the next story. This is about the economic stimulus. Now, a lot of people are going ham against AOC. The Hill reports, Ocasio-Cortez comes out against interim coronavirus relief bill, and in comes the outrage. Now, this is actually more of a 50-50 thing. AOC is not entirely wrong. There's a good argument to push back against her for doing this, but there is something important to talk about when it comes to these relief bills. Now, as I said in the past, when it came to the first relief bill, the Democrats were blocking it, and this was not the time. We are facing a major economic crash. Don't do it. When it comes to the extension, the Republicans wanted to add another $250 billion to the small business loans. Should have done it. But there are problems that should be pointed out. I think because of the emergency, you guys got to grin and bear it, and you got to understand we're going to regret this. There's a lot of problems with it, but what do? Right? We got a building on fire. We don't just sit here and argue about the right way to do it. We say just splash the water and we'll figure things out as we go. I think that's the tough call. Now, AOC is saying she's opposing this because she wants to see more states, localities get access to this funding as well as individuals. And we just saw a major mess up. Publicly traded firms get $300 million in small business loans. Companies like Shake Shack, Potbelly, and what else? We have Shake Shack, Potbelly, and Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Weird name, by the way. But why were these major publicly traded companies that have $80+ million in their coffers getting access to the small business loans we need? I'll throw some shade right at this program. I think it was still the right thing to implement. And now we've seen Shake Shack has actually given back $10 million because people were like, why are you getting this money of all people? Let me tell you something. When this Paycheck Protection Program came out, I run a small business. All right, I got a handful of employees. They're my friends. They work with me. They help me do a lot of these things. And I have a responsibility to them. I do my show, but I also am asking them to take a risk on me and my small business that they have a job, they can work for me, they can, I essentially poached people from other industries. Some of you who've watched the Timcast IRL podcast know that, Adam, who co-hosts the show with me, was doing his thing, and I said, come out here, upend your life. I've got a job for you. What happens now that the revenue is crashing? We're getting scary close to the point where we dip into the red. I'm smart, all right? Well, hold on. Let me walk that back. I don't want to brag, but I say I'm smart in the sense that I've saved money so that in the event of downturn or say YouTube banning me, I'm not going to put the risk on the people I'm asking to work with me. I'm going to make sure that they're going to be taken care of. When the Paycheck Protection Program became available, I started talking with my accountant and about how do we do this? And I'm a small business. I don't have nearly the means of these major corporations. So these big companies snap their fingers, their legal departments get on it, and boom, they instantly get access to these loans. Not me. It was more difficult for me to figure out. I didn't know if it was the right thing to do, what it meant in the long term. Will it be a risk to my business? And I don't have the resources to just dump money on a legal team to take care of it for me. So you end up with these major companies getting access to all this stuff. Fair criticism. And I'm on the short end of that. I'm on the stick end of this whole thing, right? I'm not enjoying what happened. So I think it's fair that right now we're looking at the next relief package. We need to get this. Actually, let me read this for you. Make sure I have the context clear because I am still going to be criticizing AOC. Like I said, there's some good points she's making. It's a difficult position to figure out. What's the right side? Should we scrutinize these big businesses and say it was the fault of Senate for passing this bill in the first place? No. Look, $300 million went to these big companies, but 49 billion went to small businesses. So that was good. We should have given them more. We can complain about this screw up, but to obstruct this, I think is a bad idea. So right now, it does make sense that we want to get in the next relief package more money for states, more monies for localities and individuals. Definitely. I don't think blocking it necessarily makes the most sense because we're going to see problems no matter what we do. The Hill reports, AOC said Monday that she opposes the latest version of an interim relief package to address the coronavirus pandemic, while acknowledging the legislation hasn't been finalized yet. We have not seen the final text of this bill, but what I can say is that if it matches up with what has been reported, I will not support this bill personally. It is insulting to think we can pass such a small amount of money in the context of not knowing when Congress is even going to reconvene, and pass such a small amount of money, pat ourselves on the back, and then leave town again. I actually don't entirely disagree with that. But the problem is, what's a small amount of money? How much money do you need? We don't know. We really, really don't. They go on to say, Democrats have been pushing for the package to also include funds for hospitals, state and local governments, and food assistance. According to Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin, the emerging measure would include $300 billion for the Small Business Paycheck Protection Program, $50 billion for the Economic Injury Disaster Program, $75 for hospitals, $25 for testing. They want more. Seems like the number's arbitrary. Is that enough? I honestly don't know. Right now, the Republicans have been trying to just increase the money going straight to small businesses, and the Democrats obstructed that. That's a mistake. If you want, now for that measure, period, the Democrats are completely in the wrong on this one. They need to just get the money to the businesses. And I'm saying that as a small business owner myself. The money's got to come to these people so they don't get their jobs lost. You know, Nancy Pelosi's going bragging about her ice cream. It's, not the time, man. Really not the time. Now, beyond that, beyond the small business loan thing, sign that. We all agree on that. Let that go through. Then negotiate everything else. And that's been the big problem. What I believe they're talking about is muddying up the actual small business relief. And that's a mistake. People are losing their jobs. So Michelle Caruso Cabrera, who I believe to be, and presumably the real frontrunner challenger to AOC in this upcoming primary, said, outrageous. AOC is now opposing the latest COVID relief package, which includes critical funding for small business lending. She needs to work with Cuomo, Pelosi, Schumer, and get a deal done now. Enough of AOC's division. Now is the time for unity. I got to agree with Michelle Caruso Cabrera. While I think it's fair to give AOC credit because there were serious problems how this money went out, now really isn't the time. And like I said, it's like a 50-50 thing. So I'm leaning more towards, you know what? Michelle's correct. We're in an emergency. Things are not necessarily getting better as of right now. They're getting worse. Unemployment is getting worse. People are suffering. People are protesting. We're either going to open things up or we're going to accept we need emergency stimulus right now. AOC doesn't get it. When you look at the initial tweet that I was dragging her over, reveling in the suffering of others, naively or ignorantly not realizing it, you can see how she really doesn't understand how obstructing this could lead to substantially more suffering. She wants to get her ideological gains. It's childish and immature. AOC is inexperienced. She lacks worldly understanding of things. She needs to travel more. She needs to travel the world, meet people, and understand how things really are. She needs to go and work for some of these small businesses in middle America, not at a bar in New York City. She needs to understand how other people live. I know everybody's arguing, and everybody thinks there's a right and a wrong way to do things, and it's hard to know who's correct. But here's what I see. The Republicans just wanted to increase the fund. It's the easiest, simple solution. Rubber stamp, more money, put the Band-Aid on. We'll negotiate other things later. That makes sense to me. The Democrats, I believe, are just trying to appear useful because the Republicans were right. Just give the small businesses the loans. Sure, some of these big companies got money they shouldn't have gotten. Some of them are giving it back, but it was $300 million. I believe that was the number the AP said. And that's awful. That money should go to small businesses, but we had $350 billion, all right? So it's a small fraction of what went out. We're going to see hiccups. We're going to see mistakes. We're going to see criticisms. Get the businesses the money they need. Stop sitting around and pretending like people can wait. People are looking at empty refrigerators. They're lining up at food banks. I mean, we're in dire straits with the oil collapse. The economy is crumbling like dominoes. Get the bill done. Now is not the time for moral grandstanding. So listen, I'm gonna end this again by saying what I said in the beginning. There's a lot to criticize AOC for, Nancy Pelosi, Schumer. I actually think that AOC is better than Pelosi in a lot of ways at this point. But I think they're mostly just pretending to be useful. AOC doesn't seem to really know where she is or where she fits in anymore. She's been endorsing mainstream candidates. Now is not the time. We really got to get things done. But she is not the caricature of evil that people make her out to be. She's just a naive and immature person. And that's dangerous. Giving the power of government, giving a loaded weapon to a child is not something you want to do without direct supervision. Sure, you got a young kid, you can get them started and teach them how to use these things. That would mean like AOC being an office assistant, not being in Congress, working for another politician to learn the ropes, not being handed a powerful weapon and just dropped in the battlefield. Then she's going to go around spraying. I'll tell you what, man, there was a story about someone who gave, it was, I don't remember, I don't know what kind of weapon it was, but it was a small full auto handheld. They, I guess, I don't know, I'm not a gun person, so forgive me. They gave it to this little girl, and when she pulled the trigger, the recoil flew back. She hit somebody in the head. And that's what you don't want to do. AOC has much more power than she knows what to deal with, and it's dangerous. It really is. I'm glad you deleted the tweet. So, you know, look, pencils have erasers. She didn't get it. She corrected it. I accept that. But when you see that tweet from her, you recognize that she really doesn't get it. You know, she figured it out after the fact. She's learning as she's going. And that's fair and that's fine. She's young. But she is in Congress. She's in the major leagues. All right, if you want to learn, put on your training wheels and go right around and have someone watch you. Otherwise, you're going to fall over. But it's like we put a little kid on a mountain bike and dropped them down a mountainside. And now we can see her bouncing around, flopping around, getting hurt. It's going to result in the bike falling down the mountainside, hitting some pedestrians, hitting some people minding their own business. What she does will result in massive repercussions. It's not just her, though. It's also Pelosi. You've got some of the oldest and some of the youngest, and it is just, I don't know, man. It's getting crazy. Hopefully it works out for the best, but it's time to get this relief package pushed through. The businesses, we can't wait. I see things are reopening around the country, so that's good. I guess we'll see how it plays out. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. youtube.com/Timcast. It is a different channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.